I'm Rachel, and my life was a quiet suburban dream until the day it shattered like glass under a hammer. 12 years with Mark, my stoic husband, built a home that felt safe, even if the silence between us sometimes screamed louder than words. But beneath the surface of our modest house, with its peeling paint and weed-choked lawn, a storm was brewing, one I didn't see coming. It started with a simple request to help in his sacred garage, a place I'd never dared to trespass, until a stranger's shadow darkened the doorway, and a dangerous spark ignited something I couldn't control. Now, as the ashes of my choices smolder, I'm left standing in the wreckage of my marriage, wondering if Mark knows the truth, and what he'll burn next to make me pay. Picture this. I'm standing at my kitchen window, staring out at a world that's somehow both too still and too heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. My name's Rachel, and at 35, I've carved out a life that looks steady from the outside. But inside? That's a different story. I've been married to Mark for 12 years now. He's 38, a man of few words, but a storm of intensity beneath the surface. He's got hands that can fix anything, cars, appliances, even the broken bits of our old house. But there's a piece of him, a shadowy past, he keeps locked away. I've learned not to pry, though sometimes I catch a flicker in his eyes, like he's somewhere else entirely. Our marriage isn't a fairy tale, but it's solid. At least I've always told myself it is. We live in a modest suburban home, tucked into a quiet neighborhood where the biggest drama is usually someone's dog barking too late at night. Our place isn't much to look at, peeling paint on the siding, a lawn that's more weeds than grass, but it's ours. At the back of the property sits a detached garage, Mark's sanctuary. It's his workshop, his escape, a place where he spends hours tinkering with tools and engines. I rarely go in there. It's his domain, and I've always respected that unspoken boundary. Meanwhile, I'm a freelance graphic designer, working from a cramped corner of our living room. My days are a blur of deadlines and digital sketches, but the silence of working alone gets to me sometimes. I miss the buzz of an office, the casual chatter of coworkers. Instead, I'm here, often waiting for Mark to come home from his long shifts as a mechanic. Lately, though, when he does walk through the door, he's not really here. He's distracted, his mind somewhere I can't reach. I've asked if something's wrong, but he just shrugs, mutters a vague, "It's nothing," and disappears into his own head. It's been gnawing at me, this distance, this wall he's built. I can feel it, cold and unyielding, and it makes my stomach twist in ways I can't quite name. It was on a gray Saturday morning when things started to shift, though I didn't know it then. The sky was a slab of slate, the kind of day that makes you want to stay under the covers. Mark was already up, pacing in the kitchen with a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. His jaw was tight, his movements sharp, like he was wrestling with something he couldn't say. Then, out of nowhere, he turned to me and asked if I'd help him with a small project in the garage. "Just some cleaning up," he said, while he installed a few security cameras around the property. His voice had this odd edge to it, a mix of urgency and something else. Restraint, maybe? Like he was holding back a flood of words he wasn't ready to let loose. I nodded, a little thrown by the request, but figured it was a chance to bridge some of that gap between us. So, I pulled on an old hoodie, slipped into worn sneakers, and followed him out to the garage, the chill of the morning biting at my skin as we crossed the patchy yard. Stepping into the garage felt like crossing into another world, one that wasn't mine. The flickering fluorescent light overhead buzzed like a trapped insect, casting harsh, uneven shadows across the cluttered space. Stacks of dusty boxes lined the walls, overflowing with old tools, rusted car parts, and forgotten odds and ends that hadn't seen daylight in years. The cold concrete floor sent a shiver up my legs, and the air carried a heavy mix of motor oil and mildew, a scent that clung to the back of my throat. This was Mark's private domain, a sanctuary I'd always steered clear of, and being here made me feel like an intruder, like I was trespassing on something sacred. Every creak of the floor, every shift of a box, felt amplified in the stillness, as if the space itself was watching me, judging my presence. I got to work anyway, trying to shake off the unease. Mark had wandered off somewhere outside, muttering about setting up those cameras, leaving me alone with the mess. I started by dragging heavy boxes to one side, the cardboard rough against my palms, kicking up clouds of dust that made me cough. I grabbed a broom and swept at the debris scattered across the floor, the bristles scraping against the concrete with a gritty sound that echoed in the quiet. As I moved, I couldn't help but notice the small red lights blinking to life in the corners of the ceiling. The cameras were coming online, their tiny eyes watching every inch of this cluttered old shed. A prickle of unease crawled up my spine. Why did Mark need so much security for a place like this? It's just a garage, isn't it? I tried to push the thought away, but it lingered like a bad taste. Leaning out the open garage door, I called to Mark, my voice cutting through the damp morning air. I asked if he needed a hand with the cameras, hoping for some kind of connection, even just a few words. But his response came back curt, clipped, like he was barely listening. "I've got it," he snapped, his tone sharp enough to make me flinch. I couldn't see him from where I stood, just heard his voice somewhere beyond the yard, distracted and distant. I swallowed the sting of his dismissal and turned back to the task at hand, determined to keep busy. I hauled more boxes, their weight straining my arms, and wiped down grimy shelves with a rag that quickly turned black with dust and grease. My hands were filthy, streaked with dirt, and I could feel sweat beading on my brow despite the chill. My back ached from bending over, a dull throb settling into my muscles. I was hunched over another heavy box, my fingers digging into the worn cardboard when a shadow fell across the concrete floor in front of me. My breath caught, thinking it was Mark finally coming back to check on things. I straightened up, wiping the sweat from my forehead with the back of my hand, and turned toward the garage doorway. But it wasn't Mark standing there. It was someone I'd never seen before. A tall, broad-shouldered man dressed in black jeans and a black hoodie, the hood pulled low enough to cast a partial shadow over his face. My heart stuttered for a moment, a mix of surprise and unease rippling through me. Who was this guy, and why was he here in Mark's sacred space? He stepped forward, just enough for the dim light to catch his features, and introduced himself. "Name's Caleb," he said, his voice deep and gravelly, like he'd smoked one too many cigarettes in his lifetime. "Mark sent me to help with the cleanup." I blinked, caught completely off guard. Mark hadn't mentioned anyone else coming by. Why wouldn't he tell me something like that? My mind raced with questions, but I forced a small nod, trying to play it cool, like strangers showing up unannounced in my husband's garage was no big deal. "Okay, sure," I mumbled, my voice thinner than I'd intended. "Grab a box, I guess." As we started working, I couldn't help but steal glances at him, trying to piece together who he was. Caleb had piercing gray eyes, sharp and unreadable, like they could cut right through you. There was a faint scar on his jaw, a jagged line that looked like it had a story behind it, though I wasn't about to ask. He moved with a quiet confidence, every step deliberate, every motion controlled, and it unnerved me in a way I couldn't quite pin down. It was like he owned the space, even though he was the outsider here. We shifted boxes side by side, the silence between us growing heavier with every passing minute. He didn't say much, just watched me out of the corner of his eye, his gaze lingering a little too long. Every now and then, his arm would brush against mine as we reached for the same stack, and I'd feel this strange jolt, a flicker of something I didn't want to name. I kept my eyes on the task, trying to ignore the tension building in the air, but it was impossible to shake. And then there were those cameras, their tiny red lights glowing in the corners of the garage. I could feel them watching, recording every move, every fleeting glance. Was Mark on the other end, seeing this? The thought made my stomach twist tighter. I bent down to lift a particularly heavy crate, grunting under the strain, when I felt a hand on my shoulder. Firm, but not rough. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. Caleb was right there, closer than he'd been all morning, his presence overwhelming. He didn't say a word, just stepped even nearer, so close I could feel the warmth of his breath against the back of my neck. My body locked up, caught between a rush of fear and something else, something dangerous and electric that I hadn't felt in years. My mind screamed at me to step away, to think of Mark, to remember the life I'd built. But there was another part of me, buried deep under the monotony of endless days and silent nights, that craved this raw, unfiltered moment, this break from the numbness that had settled into my bones. I didn't push him away. I couldn't. Or maybe I just wouldn't. What happened next was a blur, a chaotic rush against the cold, rough wall of the garage. It was quick, almost desperate, surrounded by the sharp tang of oil and the musty scent of dust. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might crack my ribs, adrenaline flooding every inch of me. There was guilt, sharp and biting, clawing at the edges of my mind, but it mingled with something else, a strange, dizzying sense of liberation, like I'd been trapped in a cage of routine and unspoken words for years. As I stumbled out of the garage, making my throat. I'm standing there. My legs felt like they were made of rubber, barely holding me up. My mind was a storm, a chaotic swirl of guilt and defiance tearing through me with every shaky step. What had just happened with Caleb? I didn't regret it, not exactly. It felt like something I'd needed, a release of a pressure that had been building inside me for years, a crack in the dam of my carefully controlled life. But the weight of it, the reality of what I'd done, pressed down on me like a physical force, making my chest tight and my breath shallow. I was terrified of facing Mark, of looking into his eyes and seeing something that would confirm my worst fears. What if he knew? What if he'd seen? Those cameras, their blinking red eyes, haunted me as I left his sanctuary behind, the door creaking shut with a finality that made my stomach lurch. The walk back to the house felt endless, though it was just across the patchy yard. The late afternoon sun hung low in the sky, casting long, jagged shadows that stretched across the ground like accusing fingers pointing right at me. My sneakers crunched against the gravel driveway, each step a loud reminder of the silence I was walking into. The air was cool now, a sharp contrast to the heat still lingering on my skin, a heat I couldn't shake no matter how much I tried to push the memory away. My hands trembled as I shoved them into the pockets of my hoodie, trying to steady myself. But it was no use. Every rustle of leaves, every distant bark of a neighbor's dog made me flinch, as if the world itself was waiting to call me out. I kept my head down, focusing on the uneven path, but my thoughts were a relentless loop. What I'd done, what it meant, and what would happen when I stepped through that front door. When I finally reached the house, I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. It felt heavier than it should have, like I was about to open a door to something I couldn't close again. I pushed it open anyway, the familiar creak of the hinges sounding louder than ever in the stillness. The air inside was thick, unnaturally quiet, like the house itself was holding its breath. I called out for Mark, my voice cracking on his name, but there was no answer. Just silence, deep and suffocating. My eyes darted around the entryway, and that's when I saw them, 2 suitcases, packed and zipped shut, sitting by the front door like they'd been waiting for me. My stomach dropped, a cold dread pooling in my gut. Who was leaving? Was it him? Was it me? I couldn't think straight, couldn't process the sight of those bags just sitting there, a silent declaration of something I wasn't ready to face. I moved through the house like a ghost, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood as I searched for him. "Mark?" I called again, my voice trembling now, barely above a whisper. The living room was empty, the couch untouched, the TV dark. I checked the kitchen, half expecting to see him standing by the sink, with that distant look he'd worn so often lately. But it was deserted, the counter cluttered with unwashed dishes from breakfast. My heart pounded harder with every empty room, the hallway stretching out before me like a tunnel with no end. I kept calling his name, each time a little more desperate. But the silence answered me every time, mocking me with its weight. I felt like I was drowning in it, in the quiet that seemed to know everything I'd done. Then I saw him. He was standing by the back door, his broad frame silhouetted against the fading light filtering through the glass. His keys dangled from one hand, swaying slightly, like a pendulum counting down to something inevitable. His face was unreadable, cold in a way I'd never seen before, almost hollow, like the man I'd known for 12 years had been carved out and replaced with a stranger. I opened my mouth to speak, to explain, to apologize, anything to break through that icy wall. But the words stuck in my throat, choking me. I wanted to. I'm standing there, frozen in the doorway, my heart hammering so hard it feels like it might shatter my chest. Mark's silhouette against the fading light is a dark, unyielding shape, and I can't tear my eyes away from him. The silence between us is a living thing, heavy and suffocating, pressing down on me until I can barely breathe. I want to scream, to beg, to do anything to shatter that cold, hollow look on his face, but my voice is gone, stolen by the weight of what I've done. Then, without a word, he turns away from me, his movements sharp and deliberate, like a man who's made up his mind about something final. He steps outside, and I stumble after him, my legs shaky, my mind a chaotic mess of fear and desperation. The dusk has settled over our quiet neighborhood, the dim streetlights flickering to life one by one, casting weak, wavering pools of yellow across the cracked pavement. The air is cool, biting at my skin through my thin hoodie, but I barely feel it. All I can see is Mark, striding with a purpose I don't understand toward Caleb's car parked just down the street. His shoulders are tense, hunched like he's carrying a burden too heavy to bear, and his hands are clenched into tight fists at his sides. There's a storm in him, one I've always known was there but never seen unleashed, until now. My stomach twists as I watch him, a sick feeling spreading through me, because I know deep down that whatever's coming, I can't stop it. He reaches the car, an old beat-up sedan that's seen better days, and stops for a moment, just staring at it, like it's something personal, something he hates with every fiber of his being. I'm still in the doorway, my feet rooted to the ground, when I see him pull something from the pocket of his jacket. It's a small canister, the kind you'd use for lighter fluid, and the sight of it makes my breath catch in my throat, sharp and painful. My mind screams at me to move, to run to him, to do something, but I'm paralyzed, caught in the horror of what I think is about to happen. Before I can even process it fully, he unscrews the cap and starts pouring the liquid over the hood of the car, the sharp, chemical smell cutting through the evening air even from where I stand. It glistens under the streetlight, a dark, wet sheen that promises destruction. Then he pulls out a matchbook, and time seems to slow to a crawl. I watch, helpless, as he strikes the match, the tiny flame flaring to life, bright and deadly in the growing darkness, It's like a spark of his rage made real, a small, flickering thing that holds the power to ruin everything. He doesn't hesitate, doesn't even look back at me. He just tosses the match onto the hood, and with a sudden, violent whoosh, the fire ignites, orange and yellow tongues of flame leaping up, devouring the car in hungry, relentless waves. The heat hits me even from this distance, a wall of warmth that makes my skin prickle and my eyes sting. The flames roar, a sound like a beast waking up, and they dance wildly, licking up the sides of the vehicle, blackening the paint, curling around the edges with a ferocity that mirrors the pain I saw in Mark's eyes just moments ago. I'm still frozen, my hands gripping the doorframe so hard my knuckles are white. I can't look away, can't tear my gaze from the inferno that's consuming Caleb's car. The firelight reflects in Mark's eyes as he stands there, unmoving, watching it burn. His face is a mask of raw, unfiltered emotion, rage, betrayal, a grief so deep it cuts me to see it. His eyes are like twin pools of fire themselves, glowing with an intensity that makes my chest ache. The crackling of the blaze fills the air, a sharp, snapping sound that drowns out the quiet hum of the neighborhood. The acrid stench of burning metal and rubber stings my nose, making my throat. I'm standing there, watching the last embers of the fire die down as Mark turns away from the wreckage of Caleb's car. Without a glance in my direction, he walks off into the night, his figure swallowed by the shadows beyond the streetlights. I'm left alone on the porch, the heat of the blaze still lingering on my skin, mixing with the cold dread that settled deep in my bones. The distant wail of sirens grows louder, cutting through the smoky air, and soon the fire department rolls in, their red and blue lights flashing like angry eyes in the dark. They move with practiced urgency, hoses uncoiling like snakes as they douse what's left of the charred remains. Water hisses against the hot metal, sending up plumes of steam that drift like ghosts into the night sky. The smell of burnt rubber and melted plastic is overwhelming, clinging to the inside of my nose, making every breath a bitter reminder of what just unfolded. Neighbors have gathered now, drawn by the commotion, their hushed whispers and curious stares piercing through the haze. I can feel their eyes on me, standing alone on the porch in my worn hoodie, arms crossed tight over my chest, as if I can shield myself from their judgment. They murmur to each other behind cupped hands, their voices a low hum of speculation and pity. I don't move, don't acknowledge them. I just stand there, rooted to the spot, feeling the weight of their gaze like a physical thing, pressing down on me until I can barely stand straight. The firefighters shout commands to one another, their voices sharp and authoritative, but it all feels distant, like I'm underwater, hearing everything through a muffled veil. My mind is elsewhere, replaying the moment Mark walked away, the finality of his steps echoing louder in my memory than the chaos around me. Hours pass, or maybe it's just minutes. Time feels warped, stretched thin by the weight of the night. The fire is out, the trucks pull away, their sirens fading into a mournful drone. The neighbors retreat to their homes, their curiosity sated for now, leaving behind an eerie stillness. I'm alone again, the porch creaking under my weight as I turn back to the house. Stepping inside feels like walking into a tomb. The air is cold, heavy with silence, and the faint scent of smoke has seeped through the walls, tainting every corner of what used to be my sanctuary. I shut the door behind me, the click of the latch sounding like a gunshot in the quiet. The darkness wraps around me as I move through the familiar rooms, not bothering to turn on the lights. What's the point? There's nothing here to illuminate anymore. I sink onto the couch, the worn cushions sagging under me, and let the shadows swallow me whole. My hands rest limp in my lap, fingers tracing absent patterns on the frayed fabric as my mind churns, dragging me back through every moment of this cursed day. I see the garage again, the dim light flickering overhead, the smell of oil thick in the air as Caleb stepped too close. I feel that rush again, that dangerous, reckless pull that tore through years of numbness in a single stolen moment. Then the fire, the roar of the flames, the raw pain in Mark's eyes as he watched it all burn. And his departure, silent, final, a door slamming shut on 12 years of our life together. I sit there, staring into the void of the living room, and I let myself admit the truth I've been dodging since it all went down. I don't regret what happened with Caleb. I can't. It was like a fracture in the perfect, polished surface I'd built around myself, a crack that let something real, something raw, bleed through. Even if it was fleeting, even if it cost me everything, it woke me up in a way I hadn't been in years. But the cost? Oh, the cost is a weight I can't shake. Mark is gone, and with him, the stability I clung to, the life I thought I knew. This house, once a home, feels like a hollow shell now, echoing with "but the cost." Oh, the cost is a weight I can't shake. Mark is gone, and with him, the stability I clung to, the life I thought I knew. This house, once a home, feels like a hollow shell now, echoing with the ghosts of what we were. I've lost it all in a single day, and don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.